that
let's do that.
The world's probably going to enjoy. And so welcome to a live stream, anybody who's watching here in the middle of the day, and you're totally catching into a conversation that's already happening with me and my buddy Aaron Chapman, and we don't have any viewers yet, so we'll give them just a second to log in. So I find that in real estate, the people that come in to buy a house or sell a house, everything can be smooth and smooth and smooth and smooth. And then that last 48 hours is the biggest stressor on the planet. And you think about it, it's because you're managing movers. You're trying to find your ID because people pack up and can't find their ID for closing, and they have to do the deposit and the wire, and everything feels like this huge stress ball. So if my team and I are not on our A game at the very end, then it sours the whole transaction. And I don't know why that's so hard for people to understand. And you, of course, were overhearing the conversation I was having because I didn't have this muted. And the person I had called, I was trying to share feedback because I think that's important. It's also why my husband hates eating out with me, because I love telling managers of restaurants where their staff made missteps. And it's not because I'm playing Karen, although I'm sure all the trolls on the internet will tell me that. But the reality is, if you have made a mistake, somebody has to tell you so that you can correct it. And that's what I was trying to do, was give one of my vendors a chance to correct an error that was perceived by the client. And all they do is argue. And I know we want to be defensive of our own teams and our own business process, but at a certain point, you have to say, all right, I got to make this better. I mean, it's on mortgage side, so
a mind open enough to accept their information. I'll just be blunt. I have a really, really difficult time giving people the tough feedback because of the emotional reaction I get. I can have that conversation with my buddies. I can't have that conversation very often in business because there's a lot of emotion in business, just like what you said. This guy's, coming back at you, trying to defend his position rather than understanding that, hey, wait a minute, we can make it better and we'll get more deals. I started asking this question several years ago. I would call clients like 2-3 weeks after the deal, just out on the fly, just no scheduled call, just call them up and say, hey, one, I appreciate you being willing to do business with us and trust us with that. Second, is there anything that you think that we could incorporate into our process that makes us better at what we do or more efficient, something to that effect? Now, one, I find that when people ask question, how did we do? Everybody goes directly to the negative and they want to critique you. And you've been giving them an opportunity to critique. If I'm asking them, hey, what can we incorporate? I'm now brought them in as a business partner, evaluate my business and tell me where I can be better. And now they have to take a constructive approach. The second they take that constructive approach, say, hey, cool, I'm going to give that to my team. I'll let you know what comes of that. And then when I call them back, say, this is what we did. Can you tell me how that turns out on the next deal? Now they have to do another deal with you, right? And you get to talk about that and evaluate it. Now, what I've also found is in that whole process of conversation, I learned how to construct my process where I find that everything in the very, 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 very beginning as a lender better be spot on. Otherwise, you create a lot of problems down the tail end of it, going to underwriters at the end. Like you said, the end of the deal, people stressed. You're adding to the stress at the end of the deal. So I have great pre-qualers. 2 of them are underwriters. And then at the very tail end, I have one of my best people on my team to finish all out, schedule all the closings, make sure everybody knows what's going, manage all those people so you have the greatest experience possible at the tail end. Because what happens, you can have a bad experience in the middle of it that you're having to fix all the time and have a great ending. And everybody's like, that was great. You can have an amazing experience up to the tail end. And if it goes to crap at the tail end, that whole deal sucked. And all your energy was for nothing. So you've got to make the beginning and the end be awesome. The middle can be work and manipulated. The beginning and the end have to be amazing.
Maybe. I think we overlook that the middle matters to a lot of people because right now everybody's stress level is so high. They're managing family and work, and God help them, they get on X and start looking at politics and their stress level gets even higher. So the reality is real estate is so messy. Mortgage is so messy. By its very nature, somebody in the public is willing to borrow an enormous amount of money. So of course it's stressful. So I think we all have to think about the middle section, because that was where my client got frustrated, was in the middle, trying to make sure everything stayed buttoned up, because it's a buttoned up person. And I will say this, because whoever clicked the heart button on there, you loved what Aaron said. You're totally grabbing how he was collecting feedback, because I was writing the same thing down, because I am the person who, when I go to Amazon, I look at the 1-star reviews first before I look at the 5s, because the 5s are probably paid for by these little influencers on the interwebs. The person leaving 1 star, they are not influenced by nothing except their own aggravation. And I want to know what the irritant was. And to the point of where we do get into defensive mode, I do want somebody to defend their team. I want them to defend their people, because that's the mark of you're building a company where you believe in the people that work for you. And I love that. But there also has to be that humility that says, yeah, we're great, but we've got to get better. And I think we're all facing that on the real estate side right now, because our whole industry is restructuring at the behest of the DOJ, at the behest of lawyers. And we don't even really know who's pulling the puppeteer strings, but we're all trying to pivot. So we have to get better in an unknown, very foggy world. And so anyway, for those of y'all that are watching, you should share this with a friend, because this is kind of a live edition of Crazy Shit in Real Estate, which of course is my podcast with over 1 million downloads. We're in the top tippy top of podcast. Aaron Chapman's been on my show before, and there are going to be links added in later where you can go watch his episodes, or just go to the Googles. Actually, I don't recommend Google anymore because they're manipulating the election right now. So I would recommend, I want Elon Musk to come up with a search engine. He said the other day on X he might do that, but I guess you could go to DuckDuckGo, look for Aaron Chapman, look for Crazy Shit in Real Estate, and we'll talk mortgages. But Aaron came on here today for a very specific reason. For those of y'all that are feeling the pinch of inflation, hit me in the comments, give us a like, give us a heart. If you're feeling inflation right now, then you need to be reminded that inflation is caused by adding dollars to the economy. It is caused by overly spending on the behalf of the government. And so when the government makes more dollars, your dollars are worth less. There is a new policy around mortgages, and specific around second mortgages. It's going to feel really good to you as a consumer for just a minute. It's kind of like candy. It feels really good going in until later on you realize you're middle aged and shouldn't eat full stop candy all the time, because it's just not good for you, because there will be an after effect to what's happening with second mortgages. And so Aaron, because he's a super nerd in mortgage space, and because he's got the information, let's talk about that for a second. So Aaron, let's break it down into layman's terms. What's changing in second mortgage world for all of our viewers and listeners and sharers?
Well, what we have now is when your GSE, well, one, first, thank you for the intro. Thank you for letting me back on, and then trusting me with a live stream, because, you know, a lot of people are afraid to turn Aaron Chapman loose on recording, much less live. So
it's okay. I'm going to get blocked by certain social platforms anyway, so we may as well just go live and see who we can catch along the way, because this is why we don't have a lot of viewers, because I put Patriot in my screen.
That's how you find who your people are, is to really, really sort quickly. And I think that's what you've been able to do. I do it just with my appearance. I sort fast. I mean, I start talking, I sort faster. Right.
You probably should explain the beard, though, because people who haven't met you before, then maybe they listened to the audio on the Apple podcast. They never saw the double beard. Can you tell the story of why you chose to have the?
So yeah, it goes all the way back. I had to take this to junior high, guys. So I'm sitting in my 9th grade science class, and somebody commented to the teacher, "It's like, why don't you have a beard?" He goes, "Well, it's really patchy. You won't grow in here, grow in there." I'm like, God, that to me, that was the sign of manhood growing up, of be able to have a big beard. My dad had one. My grandfather could grow one just by thinking about it for 5 minutes. And as I grew up, my right side had this patch that wouldn't fill in, and it was frustrating to me. I got in a motorcycle accident August 8th of 2008, right as everything's crashing. I got wiped out 80 plus miles an hour, tore up that side of my face, shattered both my legs. I woke up in a hospital bed. And if you've ever been to Arizona, laying on the pavement at 12:24 in the afternoon on August 8th is not a comfortable bed, right? So I had a lot of burns, a lot of road rash. So I woke up to this situation, and I was confined to a wheelchair for a period of time. My memory was wiped, and it would recycle every 4 minutes. The one thing that came out, it was a positive to me, is by tearing up that side of my face, my beard filled in. So I'm like, I can't walk, but I got a beard. So I was happy. So what I decided at that point is I would not trim it till I learned how to walk again. So it got to be about 3 inches long when I first took my first steps, and I left it there, and I kept it that length. Then I go to an event in 2016, and there's a guy walks in who's shaved head like me, he's got a full beard, and he goes, "My beard was longer than yours yesterday." And I said, "Mine was longer yesterday. I trimmed it to come here." I said, "Here's the deal. I won't trim it till I see you again. We'll see whose is longer." Now, I usually saw him at these events every 3 to 6 months. I didn't see that sumbitch for 5 years. 5 years went by, and the beard got all the way to my waist. I literally had to do this to buckle my belt. So I contacted him, said, listen, I got a YouTube channel. He goes, yeah, I watch it all the time. I said, do you mind getting it on this Friday? I was like, why? I said, because I got to cut this damn beard. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, don't you remember? It was like December 2016. I talked to him. He goes, I forgot all about that. I said, well, I didn't. So he comes on to the show, and I took my knife out. It's actually this knife given to me by my buddy Larry Yatch. He used to run the SEAL Team 3. I cut it in half right there on the show. So he's asking me later, it's like, what's the deal? I forgot all about it. How did you remember that? I was like, I'm of the opinion you have to wear your commitment on your face. I said that to you. I committed to something. And now I have to deal with the uncomfortable crap of getting this thing caught in my armpit while I'm sleeping, that kind of thing. It's not awesome, but it's become a brand. So now everybody knows me by this, the mortgage banker and the kind of the expert in inflation and all these things that walks around looking like this.
Was your wife so excited when you cut that beard?
She wouldn't mind it coming off completely, but she understands the brand scenario. She heard the story. What's funny is she didn't know the story till like year 4. And she's like, that's why you're doing that? I'm like, yes. And she's like, that's completely.
Did it not occur to you to tell her? What are you doing? Or she never asked until you didn't tell?
There's a lot. That's exactly it. There's a lot of things that are going on in here that don't rattle out. She'll hear about something that I did, or I just planned a trip to Alaska to go hunting. I'm leaving next week. So when are you going to tell me? I'm like, we live in the same house. I figured you would know.
Okay, that's hilarious. And friend, I feel for you. So I was trying to make us go to an X space at the same time, but I don't really know how to do that. So let's just click. I don't even know what category this is. We're totally practicing things on you people since it's live in the middle of the afternoon.
We're going on the fly by the skin of our ass. And if you guys can't handle it,
and this was recorded to go on the show anyway. So what does this count as? Let's see. Small business, where does inflation fall in? Shouldn't that be in business and finance instead?
You're looking to try and see where inflation's at?
I know. I was just looking at creating a space. And so let's click start now.
So I don't know anything about creating that kind of stuff. I've got technology people for that kind of thing.
I don't either. So I'm just going to put it on recording. Can it hear me? I guess it can. All right. So anyway. All right. So look at all our viewers are sitting there. So if you have a question about inflation, a question about second mortgages, a question about mortgages, feel free to hit us up in the comments at any time while we're talking here. And let's get back to where we were because I got distracted by your beard. The reality is that when we talk about what?
That's one of the other reasons. It distracts people from other things I might be doing.
I mean, it's fair. So the reality, when you said GSEs, that's the government sanctioned entities. That is your Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. That's where 80% of our residential mortgages are backstopped by the federal government. If you're in real estate, you knew that. If you're not in real estate, then you should know that if you have a conventional 30-year fixed mortgage, the chances of your mortgage being backed by the federal government is 80% because the rest of those loans are going to be those shelf loans at most lenders. Now, there's a huge change has snuck through. And I really don't think hardly anybody knows about it, Aaron. So let's talk about what's happening with second mortgages, which, by the way, y'all might think of that as your home equity line, your HELOC. That's how most people think about their second mortgage. You're able to tap the equity on your home, which is why the title of this is Should Your House Be an ATM? A lot of people think their house should be an ATM. I would just tell you to be cautious about tipping into your equity all the time. So anyway, tell them about what we're talking about here.
So we've got this update from Freddie Mac where they're basically have, as I read, I had to go back into memory, and I did already qualify, guys. I've had 8 concussions, and one of them was pretty darn hard from that one that really messed with my head, getting that back. But as I recall in some of the look up, FHFA and Freddie Mac were working together to create this second mortgage and then have it pretty much guaranteed by the government. The ability of people to tap in to the equity in their home and not have to affect that lower interest rate that they got in 2020 to 2022-ish, more like 2021. Started falling off in October 2021 when things started to change with quantitative tightening. Well, because of that, people have kind of gotten locked. They got handcuffed into their home. It's actually affecting our inventory that people have these low interest rates. And now because of those low interest rates, we've seen properties values go up like what, 50%, Lee? Is that what it is?
It depends on what market you're in, because of course, Aaron is in Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, the Southwest. I'm
in 30 markets, the Southwest, South, and the Midwest. So I do 30 different markets.
And I'm in North Carolina, South Carolina. So every market's different. Of course, we have a net increase of population in North Carolina, a net increase of jobs, whereas you have a net decrease in places like California, New York, Illinois, as people are doing what we call economic refugee moves. They are leaving the high expensive states. And so the property values are different based on your market. Always call your local realtor. Apps are not your best friend when it comes to valuation. So when you look at those numbers, Aaron, you're exactly right. That's why our inventory is low to a large extent, because somebody says, man, I'd rather downsize. I'd like to go to the beach, but my house that I'm in has this much equity and my mortgage is at 3%. So if I sell, I literally had this conversation last night in the cul-de-sac where I was working on a flip house. And the guy said, we'd like to move, but what can we get for our money? And I said, baby, the house you get is going to be less than what you have because there's no inventory. So the prices are high. And his goal was to take out the cash and pay cash for the next house so as not to have a mortgage. But for him to go down in price point, he's going to go way down in quality of property, which is not a situation we used to have in the past. But we have this situation where if somebody has $500,000 in equity in their home, which is entirely possible for a normal person who paid $200,000 in 1999, their house could have gone up to $750,000, $800,000. Now they have this huge bucket of equity. And when inflation is high, people need to tap their dollars. So what's happening with second mortgages?
So now you've got the collaboration between the Federal Housing Finance Agency and Freddie Mac coming together. So you have Freddie and Freddie. Freddie is the one that's not as commonly talked about. So the FHA announced in June 21st of this year that they're going to go ahead and conditionally approve Freddie to purchase second mortgages with certain limitations, right? Maximum volume in purchases. So they can only do, I think, like $2.5 billion in total just to kind of test this out. They have a maximum loan amount of about $78,277. They have to have a minimum seasoning period on their house, own that home for 24 months, but it's only eligible on primary residences. It's not going to be eligible on secondaries or investment properties at this point. Whether I believe they'll do that, I don't think so. It's hard to get an equity line on an investment property right now in any form. They're available, but they're really tough to get. So what this does, my personal, now we're going into opinion. These are the facts. They've allowed that to happen. Opinion, I think it's a very risky thing for them to do, number one. Number two, I think it's extremely, it's also going to be potentially limiting the amount of capital that they have if they expand this out, because there's so many people that might borrow on it. If this is a successful pilot, that's also going to limit what capital Fannie and Freddie have the capability, or at least Freddie, to invest into first mortgages, right? So it's going to affect potentially interest rates, because what's interest rate driven by? Supply and demand of money. So if their supply capability is now shrunk because it's over here, now this is just a guess, it may impact how those mortgages are on the front. The other thing is just the average consumer, a person thinking, okay, I'm going to tap into the equity of my home, and then I'm going to take that. I don't mind, or I don't discourage a person from tapping the equity. What are you going to do with it? I finance investment property across the United States. The Carolinas, quite a bit going on in North Carolina right now, that we're helping investors invest in properties to buy and hold and have a piece of the United States before it's all taken by the hedge funds. That type of thing, if you're able to use that and reuse it in the correct manner, I'm all for it, especially if you got something probably really cheaply backed by the government. It's always going to be fairly cheaper than going to the open market. But at the same time, there's a lot of risk if you take that money and do something stupid. If you end up with a new boat and a Denali in your driveway just because you're a baller now, there's a problem.
Okay, so let's back that up for a second, because what the public should know that you might not know, that second mortgage / home equity line / HELOC, that has never been backed by Fannie and Freddie before. That was a risk that your lender took to let you tap your equity, thinking about the value of the property and what the underlying collateral looks like. So if your house is worth $500,000 and you owe $200,000 on your first mortgage, of course they're willing to give you a loan on that remaining equity, because they feel like if you stop making the payments, there's a good chance everybody's going to get repaid. That second mortgage, that home equity line, has always been a higher interest rate than your first mortgage, because in the event of foreclosure, the first mortgage gets paid first because it's in first position. The second mortgage, whether or not it gets paid, depends on the value of the property and depends on what your scenario looks like. So there is a higher risk. What's happening right now is that if the government backs the second mortgage, they're back in the secondary position. That is, in essence, putting more money into the economy. Anytime the government puts backing on something, that is an inflationary action because they are guaranteeing dollars that nobody has guaranteed before. Now, what we're expecting to happen in the second mortgage market is that those interest rates will come down because if I'm a bank and you need a second mortgage and the government's going to make sure I get my money back, yeah, you can have that money. That's fine. So what we're seeing is the potential for your home equity line interest rate to go way down. Aaron, what are you hearing on your mortgage side of things as to what that rate could look like on these, first of all, these new ones that Freddie is doing, and as we go forward, because we all know the government loves spending money. And by the way, y'all, that's an agnostic political statement. Both parties have a very big proclivity towards spending money and printing dollars.
So right now, I'm not seeing those popping up on my rate sheets at this point. So, when they do these test pilots, they approved it last month. So whether or not they've actually been able to put together the total program, start releasing it and if they are releasing it, could be isolated releases at this point. I've not seen any of those hit my rate sheet. When I do, I'd love to come back and talk about that. But I believe it's probably going to be maybe within a point of what the first mortgage rates will be, just because, like you said, the risk is being taken down by who is issuing that capital. It's not the government's money. It's not Freddie and Fannie and Freddie's money. This is all banking capital.
Pause that for a second. The government doesn't produce anything, y'all. Would you please always stop saying that the government is producing anything? It's our taxpayer dollars, whether they're today's taxpayers or the future taxpayer dollars. The government is not a producer of anything. They are just a consumer. So I have to toss that in there because it kind of drives me crazy when the government likes to take credit for what they do. All they do is take from us, the citizens, and then do what they wish with it. But you're 100% right that this is obviously early days on this. So here's what I want y'all to consider. If you are a homeowner, it is tempting to take out that home equity line. Now, you might be the person who says, I want to take it and invest it in something else. I want to take the dollars that I'm paying 5% interest on and go make 7% interest. You're always in a risk reward ratio there. My question is this: these home equity lines that are going to be backed by Fannie and Freddie, they go with your primary residence, which is what you just said. They won't apply to investment properties and second homes. Are you willing to put your primary residence at risk? And this is a question that bothers me tremendously as a realtor, as somebody who's got a financial background. It worries me tremendously when people take out home equity lines and go spend them, even if it's on another investment property or on a Denali or a boat or anything at all, because in the event that you lose your job and can't make a payment on your house or that investment goes sideways, the place where you raise your kids and come home at night is now at risk. And I don't know that enough people think their way through the what if when you have to start paying back the debts that you take out, because all these are still debts. Even if they sound easier because they're backed by the government, it's still debt.
It's still something that has to be repaid. That's the bottom line, what you're saying there. If a person doesn't have some way of guaranteeing their repayment on that, you're putting yourself, you're huge risk. If you are going to put yourself at risk, you are going to take that risk, make sure you're putting it someplace very, very secure to drain it. This is not one of those things where I'm gonna try and get into the newest Bitcoin, see if I can get in on this deal. That's not what this is for. If you're going to choose to do that, you definitely need to walk cautiously and put it someplace secure. Now, we all believe in real estate. We're sitting here on the Crazy Shit in Real Estate podcast. We don't know where it's going to go. I have no idea where it's going to go. But I do have a lot of faith in the real estate investor buying in certain markets, the South, the Midwest, for some of those really, really good buy and hold rental markets. And we are pushing renters up. I'm just thinking what's going on with the hedge funds. But at the same time, caution, huge caution with this. This is not a freebie. This is not an ATM. We don't know. I don't believe we're going to see the big crash that we saw in 2008, but there's a lot of shit happening I didn't think we're going to see, right?
Every day is a history book event right now. Every day is a history book event right now. This is crazy times.
Exactly. So we can have all the metrics in the world that would say real estate's a safe place, but we also have insanity going on everywhere else that could just completely implode everything. So,
okay, so let's talk about one of those insanity things that is infuriating to me when I see it in the news media. And I know that you and I are very aligned on how we see some of these things. The talk that is continually being dripped out of Washington, D.C., this insane proposal to tax unrealized capital gains. That is what concerns me the most. So if you back up a few minutes in our conversation, those of y'all that are joining us, hey, what's up? Aaron and I are talking mortgages, changes in the business, what to do with your housing money. In many markets around the country, your equity has just ballooned into this huge number. And as most people know, if they've paid any attention, on your primary residence, you do have a capital gains exclusion. It's not been indexed since it came in under the Clinton administration in the 90s. So if you're a single person, you're exempt from cap gains up to $250,000. Above that, y'all, you're paying your capital gains rate. And how much that is depends on short-term versus long-term, depends on your income level. That's how your capital gains rate is determined. If you're married, you're exempt up to $500,000. And above that, you're going to pay capital gains. So let's just say that you're a mama in the house that you paid $18,000 for 50 years ago. And now it's worth $800,000 and Pawpaw's gone. So your taxes now, you're filing single, you're at $250,000. What is mama going to do with that extra $500,000? Well, she's going to have to pay capital gains on it when it sells or when the estate happens. The government is proposing that you be at a position now where you pay taxes on the capital gains in your home that you've not sold. So ask yourself this question. This is bothering me tremendously. And what bothers me more is how many people are astute and really smart, and they're not catching all these conversations because of what you just said, Aaron. There's a new history-making moment every single freaking day. So the normal person can't absorb everything that's coming at them. I am wildly concerned about that proposal coming out of DC because it's a money grab from the government. And if Mama is suddenly being told she's going to have to pay unrealized capital gains, so she's not sold the house, she's just getting a tax bill for the amount that the house is proposed to, or purportedly worth, where's she going to get $100,000?
What's even scarier, Lee, if that kind of bullshit goes through, who determines the value of that property?
The government wants it to be the AVMs because the government hates certified residential appraisers, and they are often promoting these automated valuation models, which some of y'all might call Zestimates. It's the numbers that are created by the internet, by computers, by algorithms. So if the algorithm says your house is worth $900,000, but you call your local realtor, and I'm like, baby, that ain't $900,000. You're on the side of the hill backing up to a 4-lane highway and a power line. You're at $775,000. The government's going to go with the higher number when they come up with your tax rate. This is something that's very valid and should be of concern to every single citizen who is a property owner, because what do you do if you're faced with a huge tax bill? How many people then are going to say, I can't pay it, so I'm going to have to sell? Is this their way of getting inventory into the market while they grab your money? Well, okay, fine. So Mama has to sell her house and pay the government $100,000. Where's she going to go? We still don't have inventory. It is this very bad situation where the snake is eating its tail. And I really don't know what we do to stop bad policies like that, because as a member of the public, how do I get it to stop?
Let me stop there. Is the snake eating its tail, though? Can you think about that when you've got them forcing people, hey, I got to pay this tax bill, so I got to offload this house, and I can go live with the remainder of that in a nursing home or something. Who's picking that house up? We've got massive corporations right now that have under management. Only 2 countries have a bigger GDP than these corporations have as far as what they have under management, and they are buying up real estate like crazy. They're literally taking. Last year, in 2023, it's 44% of the single families were purchased by Vanguard, State Street, and BlackRock. Now, it's been said that they could hold or have control of 60% of the single families in the rental space by 2030. Well, if we now have this as a proposal, somebody in the background there is pushing for this. So look at this. You guys put this through. You guys will make more money in the government. You can do more crazy shit. And then we will be able to take over the real estate. It's literally walking hand in hand. when you start looking at it from peeling back a couple different layers. So what you're proposing here is people have to open their eyes up and see everything that's happening. It's impossible to see it when you have all these weapons of mass distraction constantly aimed at you, getting your attention, the craziness going on between two parties, when in reality, a lot of both those parties are working together in the background just to create bullshit to make sure that you don't have anything and you'll be happy.
I mean, what you should do if you're hearing this and you're thinking for the first time, wait a minute, I hadn't heard anything about this. Here's what I want you to do. Look up unrealized capital gains on somewhere like X and see what the conversations are. So get yourself educated and know you're not going to find this in your mainstream news sources because they have other things they want you to click on. This is a proposal that keeps coming back up. It came up again in the budget talks this year, and it's continually coming back. And I don't care what party you're in, y'all. You need to reach out to your elected officials in DC and say, whenever you hear this phrase, I want you to fight it, because in my real estate market, my neighbors can't afford to pay a giant tax bill just because their house went up in value. And you should also tell them they should be paying attention to the amount of real estate that the hedge funds are buying, because I don't like it. And I got into a very spirited conversation with another realtor who believes that if you're going to be in support of property rights, you have to agree that anybody can buy anything that they want. And the libertarian side of me wants to agree that no regulation is better. But then the reasonable side of me says, however, I also don't like foreign adversarial governments buying up our U.S. farmland. I don't like giant hedge funds owning all the houses in my community, because I know what that does to people. It takes away their opportunity for a future that's financially stable. In fact, if there's anything you should be doing right now, it's buying as much real estate as you can so that you have a stake in the ground. And then the hedge funds can't buy as much property as they want. You have to go up against them with your dollars and buy it and quit renting forever. But you're also going to have to vote like your money depends on it, because it does.
Well, and it's not so much that you have a stake in the ground, but your kids and your grandkids have a stake in the ground. We have a family trust that I had to create because I didn't come from trust. I came from the mines and cattle ranching and heavy equipment operating, that kind of stuff. I got into this industry where you were utilizing whole life policies as a family. We come together on a monthly basis, analyze the family assets. Everybody lives in a trust home. My children that get married, we buy one, they rent back from the trust because it's going to be theirs anyway, right? They're going to be beneficiaries. We've set that all up. And I'm doing that because that's the only shot they're going to have. There's no way they can afford this on their own. It ensures that we have the capability to pay for it as a group. But when you look this up, Forbes actually put out an article on April 30th about this tax plan. It's Reject Biden's plan to tax unsold assets. That is a Forbes article. Now, it talks about people who have large net worths. Guys, you got to think about this. Everybody ignores it because, that's somebody with $100 million. I'll never have $100 million. Well, the problem of it is it starts someplace where it's docile and the masses don't think it affects them, and it continues to evolve. Look at Venezuela right now. You can vote yourself into that particular situation, but you got to shoot your way back out. There's no way that these things ever stay where they are. We know that about the bureaucrats we're dealing with. They start kind of inching it in. It feels okay. We're going to get you going. They're going to boil your ass. You need to not let this kind of thing sneak up on us. We need to be very aware of what they're doing.
Well, and to that point, I think a lot of people forget to consider the value of their primary residence when they look at their net worth, because they're regular middle-class working people. They may have a 401k, they may have a pension, they may have an IRA, but that's way off in the future. And they've got bills coming in, they're paying for things, and they forgot that the house that they're in has gone up in value, especially since the COVID era started in 2020. There's a lot of people that you bought your house in 2010, 2000. You bought your house years ago, and because you live in it, you're focused on, I got to get a new washer and dryer. Oh, the roof's got a little leak. Oh, I got to replace this shrub. You're not thinking about what happened to the value. And so your net worth has gone up a lot simply because of the era that we're in. And so, by the way, if you're curious about the value of your house, if you're in this area, you can reach out to me. But honestly, wherever you are, reach out to your realtors. I mean, your realtor would love nothing more than to give you a quick snapshot of market value so you can calculate your own net worth and understand how these proposals may or may not apply to you. And to Aaron's point, you have to be willing to say, wait a minute, what's being proposed, I'm a regular Joe. This is going to apply to me. You've got to speak up and fight back. I mean, the fighting back is often not the fisticuffs fight. It is the phone calls, emails, and texts that aggravate the life out of an elected official. Be the squeaky wheel. That's who changes things at the county commission when they're talking about property tax rates. Here in my county, there's a lot of fuss about tax valuations and property taxes, and a lot of the people that are mad about it haven't moved, haven't changed anything, but the county's value has gone up around them, and they don't really know how to process that. And I understand the frustration because the numbers are high. I mean, real estate is high right now, especially as compared to what it was 20 years ago, which goes back to the point of buy real estate now. If there's anything I would go back in time and do back in my 20s, whenever that was in the last century, I would buy more real estate. I wish I had bought more houses when they were cheaper, because I missed an opportunity because I did not see long term. And if I look at all of the challenges in and around the market, the new entrants to the market, the hedge funds, if I look at what the government's proposing on bringing second mortgages into government backing, all of those things are going to loosen up the market that are going to make people continue to pay more for it. So you buy more real estate now while you can, and simultaneously argue about these terrible, terrible tax proposals. And thank you for that tip on the Forbes article. Steve Forbes is always the voice of reason when it comes to economic things, even if you disagree with him on other items.
Well, and people do trust what he has to say. So a couple of things with what you just said there. One, the squeaky wheel, guys. A lot of the people who are writing this stuff, they don't quite understand the unintended consequences of what they're writing. I've had occasions.
I think they're renters, Aaron. I think a lot of the people in DC and the think tanks, they're renters. They don't get it.
Yeah, they are. Hell yeah, they are. And they believe that what they're doing is they're taking this holy crusade on to help people in their spot. They don't realize what they're doing to their grandparents and their parents. And so I've had occasion to be in front of many senators and members of Congress to speak on real estate and the effects of inflation and some of their policies and proposed policies. And we've knocked down a lot of them with the group I'm part of. Now, one of these things you were just talking about, the $100 million, like you're not worth $100 million, not in today's dollars, but with what's going on with inflation and what the crap they're playing with the treasuries and all that stuff, $100 million tomorrow is not $100 million today. So let's talk about something real quick. I'm a massive advocate of the 30-year fixed. To me, it's the greatest financial instrument in history.
Agreed.
It's also the greatest financial instrument in history to Warren Buffett. So we can get into that if you ever want to talk to me, but let's talk about something 30 years ago. I walked into my very first Taco Bell in 1994 in Moses Lake, Washington. I ordered on their value menu 2 crunchy tacos, 2 bean burritos, and a drink for $1.99. Fast forward to 2023, November 2023. My daughter had to go back to school for something. We drove by a Taco Bell. She goes, hey, let's hit the drive-thru. So I drove her through before I was dropping her off, and she ordered exactly that. 2 crunchy tacos, 2 bean burritos, and a drink. What do you think I paid, Lee?
$32.
Oh, you're an inflation freak. No, $15.
Okay. I don't eat at Taco Bell. And so as a mother, I feel obligated to say, why the heck did you say yes to your kid wanting to eat that GMO garbage? But that's a different discussion altogether.
Understand. But I got to thinking, mate, $32. You putting that
I'm also a viewer for poking at Taco Bell.
You're taking this to a high level meal at $32. But the point is, in 30 years, that increased, that the cost adjusted by 750%. So what does that mean for you? You may think, hey, I'm not going to be affected by this thought process, this tax scenario, but the dollar value is changing so rapidly over time. Yeah, they used to mint a $20 gold piece. You could walk into a department store and buy a hat, a suit, a tie, a pair of shoes, a pair of socks, and a belt for that particular gold piece. I can't get the socks I'm wearing right now with that because that $20 doesn't buy hardly anything, but you can get all that stuff with an ounce of gold. The ounce of gold has not gone up in value. The price of those clothes have not gotten more expensive. The dollar you exchange for it has lost a significant value. So if you want to look at how that dollar affects your 30-year fixed mortgage, it's a great instrument. If you want to see how it affects your net worth and what they're planning to do to you, it completely screws you. So you've got to think ahead on a lot of these things and understand that what happens to somebody else will happen to you. They're targeting you, the middle person, not targeting the rich. They're targeting you.
Well, the rich know how to work the loopholes to get around this, which is why they offshore so much money. The average American citizen doesn't offshore their savings, your savings is your house. And that's why your realtor is always going to encourage you to think about your house as a long-term strategy. This is a house that you stay in. And some people on the internet like to call it forced savings. I'm okay with forced savings, because if your savings instrument is a place where you live, that's a win-win-win for everybody. And to backstop on the mention of gold, really good investment, by the way. Silver might even be better right now. But let's just talk very briefly about the idea of investing in real estate. Do you invest right now, or are you waiting on some kind of future reason to invest? And when I say future reason, I have to go ahead and say it because so many people ask this when they call our office. Hey, Lee, when is the market going to crash? And when are we going to see the prices fall like they did between 2008 and 2012? And I get to say to them, unless you have a time machine, we are not going back to those prices. And I might be wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong, simply because of the inflationary changes to what the dollar is. So if the market corrects, I don't see it correcting like it did then, but you might see some stabilization, some easing off of pricing, as opposed to the great gully washing that we had in those great recession years. So what are you seeing right now? If you pull your crystal ball out and somebody asks you, when are rates going to fall? Are you buying right now? When are we going to see a correction?
So as far as my crystal ball, I got to shine that son of a bitch all the time, and I still can't see through it. So
you know why, though? The Bible says not to rely on fortune tellers, tarots, and crystal balls.
and that's probably why it's not working, because I can't tell any fortune to save my life. I walked right into the 2008 like everybody else, owning real estate all over the place. When I came awake from that accident, everything was obliterated. I was worth $4 million going in, a negative net worth of $1.5 million when I came out, with a 460 credit score and a memory that recycled every 3 to 4 minutes. So start over in that type of world. You get to pay attention to what's happening. Now, my opinion, is we are going to see some pretty significant swings in isolated markets. But as far as
like where Austin, I think Austin's going to see it.
Austin's going to see it. You're going to see it in probably parts of Florida that took in a lot of massive influx. You're going to probably see some of that happening in California, because California right now is really not only just getting their ass kicked because they just have the wrong thought process altogether. Secondly, look what's happening with the insurances. We got insurance companies, big insurance companies, pulling out of Florida, out of California. They're driving the price of insurance up like 50% in some places. Why? Because cost to rebuild is enormous. Then, of course, you have the fact that they're really, really light on crime. People are breaking in and stealing everything. You've got things getting burnt down. That's what happens when you let people just run rampant and protest with a blowtorch. So those kind of things are going on. That's going to affect real estate, and there's a lot of effect that will have with how the culture is. Now, as far as my opinion on is now the right time to buy, so I look at that as a person sitting on the sidelines or sitting in the stands at a football game. They're like, I'm going to wait for the perfect time to run out there on the field and get on the highlight reel. 99.99% of the time, the only people on the highlight reel have their ass already on the field. If everybody thinks that now's the time to run on because it's the perfect time, it's the perfect time in the market getting into real estate, guess who else is running on? The entire freaking stands. You got 30 million people running onto the field at once. You're going to get your ass stomped. You're going to get kicked. You're going to get crushed to the ground and possibly killed trying to do that. Why don't you just get on the field now? So if you're on the field and you're making deals, it doesn't mean you have to do every deal. You don't have to buy every house that gets presented to you, but you have to be smart. And if you don't understand what that is, then we need to sit down and talk. Let's evaluate what it is you have to do to get involved in real estate, whether you're buying with Lee or you're buying with other people across the United States. We do business in South Carolina, North Carolina, all across the U.S. My whole goal is to guide you into what's going to help you become successful with that. Now, if you're watching and you're doing and you're picking up a deal here and a deal there and a deal there, and the perfect time does happen to be when you get on that highlight reel, you'll already be on the field. You'll already be playing ball. You'll already be able to pick up some of those deals and maybe even have contracts in place at the time. So that being the situation, what I tell everybody is get in the freaking game now, because if you don't, you're going to get stomped trying to play the game later.
And by the way, that's a long way and a very perfectly expressed one of why your realtor wants you to be pre-approved before we get into the weeds of the house hunting process. Because if you've done all your financial work in advance, Then when the house does come along that presents itself, you don't have to spend the next 48 hours digging up tax returns and answering questions. You're already in the game. But I got a rabbit hole, one more little pathway here before we jump off of this conversation for the podcast. You mentioned insurance, and I think it is the sleeping giant dragon of a problem in real estate, simply because the system is set up as a net loser in so many different areas. We are losing coverage. Florida has been destroyed by the loss of coverage. California, same thing. North Carolina. I used to hate the rate bureau. Now I'm grateful for the rate bureau because they're able to be the interface with the insurance companies and not allow the coastal communities to be destroyed and make other areas carry the burden. It's such a wild space. You're in the mortgage business. What are you concerned about when it comes to insurance and the everyday homeowner?
So what we've seen recently been a change to us in the mortgage space was before, as long as you got enough insurance to cover the loan, if something happened to the house, we were fine and we were approving that. It's changed very, very recently. We have to have total replacement costs. So that's pushing the cost of your insurance up. Now, Fannie and Freddie are saying, we've let this slide for a long time, but now you need to have total replacement coverage on your mortgage, and we have to have a breakdown from the insurance company as how they came up with that replacement cost. They have a way of breaking it down. So
okay,
that's
wait. If somebody's buying a house and they're scooping up a really good deal because they found a house and there's a divorce going on and they slash the price $100,000 to make the house go away, the mortgage is going to insist that the insurance cover total replacement cost and not the collateralized amount in the mortgage.
Yes, and let me explain why. So when you let's talk about this for a second, Lee. You're the person that found a great deal on this house, right? I paid $100,000 for a $250,000 house. I got $150,000 equity. I'm kicking ass, right?
By the way, listeners and viewers, that doesn't exist. This is hypothetical. Please do not call us looking for that deal. Carry on.
I have to use really crazy hypotheticals to drive the point home. So you got this crazy situation. The person stepped into that. They have $150,000 equity. They close on the house, and all we did was get them enough coverage or require enough coverage for that $120,000 loan. It's really cheap coverage. Then a month later, the place burns down. All the insurance is going to do is pay off the loan, give enough money to pay off the loan. But now you're getting letters from the city. And what is the city telling you? You've got a burnt down house. You need to scrape that. You need to clean that up. You need to get this because we're not going to tolerate that mess. Do you have the money to do that? You might be a first-time investor. You may not have that capital. You just lost $150,000, actually $170,000 equity because you put $20,000 down. Now look at where you're at. Now you're calling your lender up. You're calling Aaron Chapman and say, one, you suck. And number two, I'm going to have my attorney get a hold of your company because you didn't protect me. Now, to go back to 2008, the crash of 2008 and all the things that happened, those who are not in business don't realize that we as lenders got attacked because we were the ones that sold America down the river by giving them what they demanded. Everybody demanded a house because it was their right as an American. Everybody demanded to have it for free because they believed they could afford it and they didn't have to qualify it. They didn't have to put any money up. So you can get zero. They had zero down investor loans with no qualifying on the income. Now, I was the asshole that gave it to them, so it's my fault. Instead of these people being responsible for themselves, they need to blame somebody else. So now we're in a situation that when somebody lost their equity in their home and they have to pay money to go clean up the mess, and now they have this empty lot they can't really do anything with, it's my fault. They're going to come up after us as a lender. So Fannie and Freddie are like, guess what? Now you guys have to get full replacement coverage. Since you do not want to own up to your own shit, we're going to make you do this. Now, here's what some people will tell you. Other lenders will say, and they have done this, I've run up against it, go ahead and get it and then change it after you close back to the lower coverage and nothing will happen. But your servicers have to survey your insurance company annually when they're renewing it and see what kind of coverage you have. And here's what will happen. If you don't have the right coverage, they will force place coverage. Have you ever seen force place coverage, Lee?
It's real expensive. It's
like 4 to 5 times what it normally would be.
So
and here's what's happening. Here's what's really interesting about that. I've had forced place coverage before hit me and say, no, here's my insurance. So I have to prove with my insurance policy that I was covered during that window, and they eliminate the forced place coverage and I don't have to pay it. But if you do not have enough coverage, to cover that because you did what your mortgage broker did just because he wanted to close a deal and didn't give a shit about you. You went ahead and closed and then lowered your coverage. And then the lender went back with the service and said, listen, we have 8 months here. You weren't covered. We're going to force place that. Be like, no, I had insurance. You show them you didn't have enough coverage. Guess what? You got to pay. You got to pay the forced place. Don't listen to people that don't care about you. There's a reason why things are done. There's a reason why you follow those things that are done, and you continue to move forward as open-eyed as you possibly can. And understand this actually does protect you. I have an investor that had two houses burned down. Both of them he lost equity in and had to spend money to get fixed.
And I guess he probably invests in silver and gold now instead of real estate because that track record would probably preclude you from buying houses again. So I got
he has about 20 houses and he still buys. Now, as far as the silver and gold, Lee, I'm going to lean more towards copper jacketed lead is probably the best precious metal to get.
Well, that's going to be a currency in the future. Let's just call that what it is. So,
it already is.
I have a question for you. So on this replacement cost issue, I have found a lot of my past clients never think about insurance again after they buy a house. I see you. I love you. I know who you are. So you buy the house in 2001 and you've stayed there the whole time. You've renewed your insurance policy. You haven't even changed agents because you hired local. Always a good idea. And by the way, people who care about you, most likely to be entrepreneurs, small businesses, not giant websites for the record. So these people have renewed their policy every year. Their numbers went up based on the tax office. They really haven't budged because they're happy. Their value on their insurance is nowhere near total replacement cost. We do put into our communications, please make sure your replacement cost is appropriate with your insurance company, but that does change the bill. So back to our conversation about second mortgages, because that was our main focus here. When somebody looks to get a second mortgage, home equity line, HELOC, an appraisal goes along with that because the bank wants to know if we're making a secondary investment in this house, is the value there? Is it possible that that first mortgage is going to have a different valuation required for insurance and the payment's going to go up by calling for that second mortgage?
It is potential. I mean, well,
because the escrow amounts impact payments. And I find that a lot of people never think about the impact on escrows because they're thinking about the interest rate. And friends, I've said it over and over. When you're calculating your payment, it's PITI plus. It's principal, interest. That's what a website will give you. Taxes, it depends on where you live and depends on the value. And it's going up in most areas. Insurance, we're talking about it right now. It's going up. That's your payment. I always say budget in a plus because the T and the I are going to go up. The 30-year fix holds your P and the I down, but the T and the I, they are a big question mark right now. And I do worry, just like you do, Aaron, I worry about people being able to stay in their homes. And this is one of the reasons realtors are important, no matter what the mainstream media tells you, that you don't need somebody to help you buy a house. Yeah, you might be able to find it online, but who's going to help you stay in it? It's your local realtor.
Agreed. Since they're going to be doing an annual assessment of it, I think that you're going to be you might be in a position where you're going to have that movement all the time anyway. They're going to be readjusting that replacement cost coverage. I haven't seen that cycle quite yet, so we don't know. We'll see if that starts happening this next year. The one thing about it also, what's happened to the cost of reconstruction? What's happened to, the house I'm living in right now, when I bought it, it was 2019. We did a complete rehab evaluation. It'd been just under $200,000 to rehab the house the way we needed to do it. At $403,000 when it was done during the pandemic. So the cost of materials have gone up significantly. Everything's going up. Again, inflation at work. As a result of that, your coverage has to go up. It's something you have to take in consideration. You're going to get punched in the gut repeatedly, and it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when it happens. It's going to keep happening, and that's the way it's designed. It's designed in a way to hit you pretty hard. So you got to think ahead before you do anything.
So let's see, your top takeaways from this episode would be, first of all, call your local insurance agent, call whoever's got your coverage on your homeowners right now, and see what your replacement value is and see if you need to change that. And if it jacks your premium, it's going to jack your premium, but you do want that protection. The second takeaway is buy real estate. Third takeaway is you should talk to your local lender, talk to your local realtor, talk to your local everybody, and get a current scenario for yourself. And the fourth takeaway is go easy on the spending, y'all. Go easy on the home equity lines. Go easy on it. When you're going to start to hear these conversations become more frequent, you can get a home equity line, government's backing it, it's cheaper. Slow your roll before you take out more debt just because you can. Now, if you're taking it out to backstop yourself, talk to your financial advisor. I will say there's a situation on a house here in the area where we work for the buyer. We found out that the seller has been using a home equity line to make the house payments. And when I heard that, my heart just sunk to my toenails, because that means that person is not getting somebody who's able to help them cut through the noise to figure out the best possible plan. Y'all, that's something that might look like an okay plan for a minute, but that's a recipe for future disaster. And I don't want to see future disaster for anybody. So those are my top takeaways. What are your top takeaways for today, Aaron, for our audience?
Well, I'd say the number one takeaway is what you just said, is get the spending back, guys. Don't need to have the instant gratification that we have. How many people have Amazon boxes showing up at their door that don't get open for 2, 3, 4 days because you really don't give a shit about it? You enjoyed the click. You need to get past the click. You need to figure something else out. Get a different routine in your mind. Take control of your mind. And that's, I'd say, the best thing a person can do is figure out what it is that you want to have happen in your life and start putting steps in place to do that. We're going to come back. I'm going to be back on here again. Lee doesn't know that. Well, you do know, because I've got a book. I got a book. I gotta get pushed. I got to get people in on this thing.
I know, and it's really good, y'all, because I got to see the preview, and I have to finish writing my little sentence about how it's a really good book. So you're going to be excited to read it, and now that you've met Aaron, you're going to be able to read it and hear his voice talking to you while you read it.
And that's the whole point behind it, is to help you guys figure out what you want and to focus on that and get away from this stuff. We have been programmed to be somebody else's slave financially. We need to stop it. We need to focus on, that's my whole goal behind this. We're going to come back and talk about it right before the launch. I'm still waiting on the launch. I got artwork like crazy getting done on it. Let's just say it's the most expensive business card I've ever seen.
But it's a legacy. Books are a legacy. And of course, I keep mine around because it makes me happy to know I did get something tangible done with at some point in my life.
And with you writing a recommendation in it, I need to know what picture you want my artist to put you in. We're going to immortalize you in the book. My artist will do a painting of Lee inside there where you write your recommendation.
Okay. So they should take whatever version of me they found and tighten this up and fix this. It's just kidding. I like how I look. I don't need the
I mean, you are a realtor. You can send me your picture from high school.
You know what? I still have a phone on my desk with the cord. I could include this old realtor headshot with the phone with the cord.
I wouldn't mind going back to the rotary phone, because that means people can't just get me anytime they want.
Amen. But actually, you want to have some fun in your life, try to get your kids to dial a rotary phone and get the number to work. They have no idea how it worked. And for those of y'all that are watching this, you're a millennial or Zoomer, go to a museum sometime, figure out how to dial a rotary phone, and you'll appreciate how easy you have it. Aaron, thank you so much for coming on to travel in 1,000 directions with me as we hopefully help people think their way through their decisions, slow down a little bit so that you can make more good decisions about your real estate without driving yourself into a place that's not sustainable, because we want you to make sustainable decisions. And if you're in real estate, make sure that you're talking to your clients about these topics. Don't let yourself get distracted by the lawsuits and the headlines. Do what you've always done. Bring the great value. And for more episodes like this, now that you've seen a live conversation, you need to tune in to Crazy Shit in Real Estate. It's on all your normal podcast platforms and on YouTube and Rumble, where we don't get censored. Aaron, thank you so much for coming on the show. All of Aaron's contact information will be in the show notes for this episode. But before you jump off of here, give them a quick website, because on the live streams, they might need to jot it down.
Just go to aaronchapman.com. If you can't find that, Google or DuckDuckGo Aaron Chapman. I'm the only bearded redneck lender out there.
And one day I'll bring him around to liking Husqvarna better than steel. And that's where we'll end this episode. Thanks for showing up, guys, and we'll see you around.